Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe slowly. Feel what's alive inside you right now. Maybe a quiet restlessness. Maybe a tiredness without a name. Maybe the feeling that no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you wish, something still feels out of place. And what if I told you that what you're feeling isn't a sign of spiritual failure, but of preparation? What if this apparent silence around you is the field adjusting everything from within? There are moments in life when everything seems to dissolve. Old ties unravel, plans lose their meaning, and even faith seems to waver. But these aren't signs of abandonment. They are signs of realignment. It's as if the universe is gathering the pieces of your inner puzzle one by one to form a new landscape. Only during this process, everything seems to disappear, including you. The mind interprets silence as absence, the heart as rejection. But the field, this invisible field of consciousness and energy, doesn't operate through merit or punishment. It doesn't judge, it doesn't test, it responds. It observes your vibration and translates it into reality. Like a quiet gardener who sees that the flower you long for cannot bloom in old soil, it begins to prune the excess, to prune illusions, to prune the worn-out cycle of struggle you've learned to call life. And it's in that silence that everything begins again. Dr. Bruce Lipton shows us that our inner environment, made of beliefs, emotions, and memories, is the true conductor of our biology. Change what you feel, and you'll change what you live. Joe Dispenza reveals how every repeated emotion activates the same brain circuits, keeping us trapped in an old reality. You feel the same, think the same, and so you live the same, over and over, until something inside you grows tired and begins to change, without noise, without certainty, without applause. This change is subtle, almost imperceptible. Sometimes it comes as discouragement, other times as confusion, but behind it, a vibrational rehearsal is taking place. Your new frequency is being tested, and everything that doesn't resonate with it starts to fall away. Relationships, ambitions, roles you once played just to feel accepted. Everything starts to lose its color, because the soul can only bloom when the soil is clean, and the field only responds when the seed is truly ready. You're not being tested, you're being tuned, prepared, recalibrated to sustain a new way of being. One you might not even be able to imagine yet, but that is already being written inside you, silently. Sometimes what hurts the most isn't the pain itself, it's the silence that follows. That feeling of speaking to the universe and getting no response, as if the echo of your soul were being ignored. But what few people know, and even fewer can feel, is that this silence isn't absence, it's transition. It's the pause before the music begins again. There's a moment in the journey when the field, instead of answering through external signs, begins to move from the inside out. And this movement is subtle, almost invisible, like a root growing underground. No one sees it, but there, beneath the surface, the foundation of something new is being born. The quantum field doesn't test your strength. It waits for your coherence. It doesn't demand sacrifice or suffering, but it does require presence, clarity, alignment between what you feel and what you say you want. Because it's not enough to wish for a new life, if inside you're still vibrating abandonment, fear, or unworthiness. Bruce Lipton teaches us, the vibration of your internal environment dictates which genes express themselves, which biological pathways activate or go dormant. Your body listens to every whisper of your soul, and if your soul is saying, "I don't trust," even if your lips say, "I believe," the field will only respond to what vibrates stronger, what vibrates deeper, what vibrates in truth. Joe Dispenza adds, the emotions you feel most often shape your neural networks. Each time you react with the same emotions, the same thoughts repeat, and when those thoughts crystallize, your life becomes a reflection of the past. You're not creating, you're replaying. So this moment when everything feels still, when nothing responds, when all you hear is silence, might be the only space possible to break that cycle. It's in this pause that the new frequency begins to take root. Slowly, fragile, like the light of dawn, but real. And that's when everything begins to change. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. First as a feeling, then as action, and finally, as reality. There's a kind of silence that doesn't hurt, but confuses. It's not the silence of someone who doesn't want to speak. It's the silence of something being rewritten. When the universe seems quiet, maybe it's because it's busy reorganizing what you're not yet able to see. And while this may sound vague to the mind, the heart knows. There are phases when no answers arrive, no confirmations appear, and even the signs that once comforted you vanish. But it's not punishment. It's transition. The quantum field doesn't respond with urgency. It responds with coherence. And when you begin to vibrate differently, it doesn't test you. It pauses to match you, to wait until this new vibration settles. It's like changing the foundation of a house. Everything must stop for a moment, so nothing new is built on what can no longer sustain it. This silence isn't emptiness, it's gestation. In this in-between, the body feels strange, the mind questions. That intimate doubt appears. Am I really on the right path? But what's being created doesn't have form yet. It doesn't have a name, it only has frequency. And that's why it feels like nothing is happening. But everything is being rewritten within. The more we try to control the timing of manifestation, the more it slips through our fingers. Because the quantum field doesn't move with haste, it moves with precision. The mind wants speed, the spirit wants coherence. And the field only responds when both are in alignment, when truth is vibrating from within. Many confuse desire with urgency. They believe that the more force they apply, the faster it will come. But what they forget is this: in the vibrational universe, the same force that pushes also blocks. Manifestation is not about chasing. It's about stabilizing yourself at the center. And this requires a kind of patience that is not passive, but energetic. The anxiety for results is like noise interfering with the signal, like trying to hear music on a poorly tuned radio. The more impatiently you twist the dial, the less you hear. The field doesn't respond to impatience dressed as faith. It listens to the frequency of genuine surrender, the kind that doesn't demand proof, but holds steady in feeling. Bruce Lipton has shown us, it's your internal environment that regulates your biological response. And if your inner world is in a state of alarm, everything inside you shifts into survival mode. And no one manifests from fear, because fear constricts. It tightens your breath, your muscles, your energetic field, and what you're trying to attract moves further away, not out of punishment, but because of incompatibility. To manifest is to learn how to wait without leaving the place of presence. It's understanding that frequency doesn't rush, it anchors. And only when it becomes stable does reality finally begin to respond. There is a subtle form of anxiety that disguises itself as faith. It's that spiritual urgency that makes you repeat affirmations without breathing, that drives you to pray like someone pleading, not someone trusting, that pushes you to consume everything, videos, quotes, meditations, yet leaves you even more restless when nothing changes. And inside, a part of you begins to wonder, am I doing something wrong? But the truth is, this urgency doesn't come from faith, it comes from fear. Fear that the universe might forget you, fear that it's already too late, fear that once again, you won't make it. Spiritual urgency is one of the most common disguises of scarcity, and it doesn't need to scream to be present. Sometimes, it shows up in the way you glance at the clock while trying to manifest, in the impatience you feel after a practice when nothing has changed. Yet. The issue is not in the intention, it's in the vibration behind the intention, because the field senses what supports the request. And if behind the I want, there's a silent, I need this because I don't have it, what vibrates is lack. Joe Dispenza speaks of the chemistry of emotions. Recurring emotions create fixed pathways in the brain. And if anxiety becomes a habit, it not only shapes your mind, it shapes the reality the field reflects. So insisting with desperation is like trying to write a new chapter with the ink of the old story. The vibration of the request becomes incoherent with the vibration of what you desire. True faith doesn't rush. It doesn't demand immediate signs. It understands that the invisible moves in silence. And that what is being prepared for you requires a body that can receive without begging, trust without rushing, and wait without losing itself. Not everything that feels like a setback is actually a step backward. Sometimes it's just life stripping away an old version of you, a version that learned how to survive but no longer remembers how to truly live. When you begin to vibrate at a new frequency, it's common to feel loss, confusion, or disorientation. Not because you're failing, but because you're shedding layers that no longer resonate. And yes, that can hurt. Not because of the loss itself, but because you were still identified with that old way of being. Maybe you're in that moment right now, where everything that once defined you is slipping through your fingers. Your certainties, the roles you used to play, even your dreams. Everything feels like it's dissolving, and you don't yet know what will take its place. But it's in this space between I'm no longer that and I don't yet know who I am that true rebirth happens. It's not regression, it's release. Bruce Lipton teaches us that what changes our biological expression isn't the past, it's the present environment. And if your internal environment is shifting, what you're calling a setback may actually be a fine-tuning. You're not going backward, you're simply feeling the discomfort of no longer being who you once were. And that is spiritual maturity. You no longer need to fight to deserve what's already yours. You don't need to prove yourself, justify yourself, or shrink to fit. The new reality that's arriving is asking for a lighter you, a truer you. And for that to happen, the old must fall away, not as punishment, but as liberation. There is a silent cycle that traps many people on the spiritual path, the constant search for peaks of inspiration. With every moving video, every powerful quote, there's a momentary relief, as if something is being resolved within. But soon after, the emptiness returns. This oscillation between fleeting excitement and recurring frustration isn't a lack of faith, it's your dopaminergic system at work. And when it's overstimulated, it creates a dependence on novelty, not depth. Joe Dispenza warns, when we constantly seek intense spiritual stimulation, we activate brain circuits that keep us in a high, but not in stability. It's like trying to live off the thrill of arrival without ever learning how to walk the path with presence. The issue isn't the content that moves us, it's the relationship we create with it. When we use spirituality as an escape from discomfort, we lose the true gateway to transformation, inner silence. Spiritual dopamine seduces, but it doesn't sustain. It creates a cycle where you feel like you're progressing, when in reality, you're just running in emotional circles. And the field, sensitive as it is, picks up on this instability, because it doesn't respond to spikes, it responds to consistency. It doesn't collapse a new reality because you were moved. It does so when that emotion becomes part of your identity. You must learn to remain, to sit in stillness even when the content ends, to listen to your body once the music fades, to not rush to the next video as if running from yourself. It's in that raw presence, without stimulation, that frequency anchors. And that's where a new life begins to approach, in its own rhythm, with true depth. There comes a point in the journey when you start to feel like you no longer belong in the same places. The conversations that once fulfilled you now sound hollow. The people around you feel distant, even when physically close. And quietly, an uncomfortable feeling begins to emerge. No one understands me anymore. But what if that feeling is a sign of vibrational realignment, not of loneliness? What if instead of being excluded, you're actually being elevated? When your frequency begins to shift, your connections shift too. Not out of rejection, but out of dissonance. What once resonated with your former self can no longer find a field of harmony in the new you. And this process, while necessary, can be painful. Because it demands a kind of mourning. A mourning for who you used to be. A mourning for the versions of yourself that for years held together relationships, routines, and even identities. Bruce Lipton teaches us that all interchange directly affects how we interact with our environment, including emotional, family, and social environments. The body feels it, the soul feels it, but the mind often resists because it still wants to belong to what no longer makes sense. And it's in that in-between, between the old that no longer fits and the new that hasn't yet arrived, that the true reunion with yourself is born. You are not being isolated, you are being purified. The field doesn't cut ties, it tunes into truth. And when your inner truth becomes more refined, more subtle, more aligned, everything around you begins to recalibrate. Sometimes that means loss, other times silence, but always, always it means healing. When everything feels suspended, no clear direction, no obvious signs, what many call a vibrational void begins to emerge. It's that moment when you no longer know what to feel, what to do, or where to begin. And it's precisely here that transformation begins to consolidate. Not through action, but through presence, through the capacity to remain whole even when nothing responds. And for that, you must learn how to stabilize yourself. This stabilization doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the body. So here's a simple practice in 3 steps for when everything feels too slow or too confusing. First, name the real emotion, without filters, without judgment. Say to yourself with honesty, I'm feeling fear, or I'm frustrated, or simply, I don't know what I'm feeling, but it hurts. To name it is to bring light to what felt like shadow. It's giving shape to the invisible. Then recognize the mental pattern that gets triggered by that emotion. Maybe it's the old voice saying, nothing ever works out for me, or I'm falling behind, or no one helps me. That pattern doesn't need to be fought, just observed. Recognition alone begins the dissolution. Finally, be still without trying to fix it. Just breathe. Stay with it, with all that you're feeling, without running, without seeking a way out, without needing to understand. Because sometimes what your soul needs isn't an answer, it's embrace. And that embrace begins the moment you learn to hold yourself in the midst of the nothingness. Joe Dispenza teaches that the body is conditioned to react the same way over and over. But when you learn to feel without reacting, to sit with what is, without fleeing, without controlling, you break the cycle for the first time. And the field notices, because your vibration begins to stabilize. And once it stabilizes, everything around you begins to shift, even if it's not visible yet. Many people believe the hardest part is manifesting, but it's not. Manifestation is only the beginning. The real challenge lies in sustaining what has been manifested, in staying aligned with the new reality, without falling back into the old emotional patterns that supported lack, fear, and doubt. Because when the new arrives, it demands a new version of you. And if that new you still acts based on the old reactions, the field cannot maintain the vibration that brought the manifestation into your life. Imagine someone who finally attracts a healthy relationship, but unconsciously still expects to be abandoned. Or someone who manifests a new career opportunity, but continues to feel unworthy. This subtle incoherence sabotages the process, not because the universe is cruel, but because it is precise. The field doesn't give you what you desire, it reflects what you sustain. Bruce Lipton teaches that emotional programs, even the unconscious ones, are like biological commands that either activate or block the expression of reality. And if the body is still vibrating in fear, even when the mind says, I trust, it is fear the field will hear, because the body speaks louder than words. Sustaining what you've manifested requires vibrational maturity. It requires the willingness to inhabit the new, even when it still feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. It takes loving vigilance to avoid falling back into the automatic impulse to self-sabotage, to doubt, to retreat. To sustain is to remain coherent, even when old feelings try to return. And that coherence is not mental, it's energetic. It's lived through your body, your choices, the way you treat yourself when no one is watching. There's a moment in the process when everything feels like it's falling apart inside, and the mind panics. I don't know who I am anymore. But what if that not knowing is exactly the portal of transformation? What if the confusion is the signal that something deep is being rewritten, cell by cell, thought by thought? The caterpillar, before becoming a butterfly, doesn't just change form, it dissolves entirely. Inside the cocoon, it stops being what it was without yet knowing what it will become. And it's in this state of suspension that the code of a new life is activated. This metaphor is not poetic just for its beauty. It is biological, spiritual, and vibrational. When you feel groundless, without identity, without control, you might be right at the heart of your cocoon. And the cocoon is not a prison. It's a space of silent transmutation. An energetic womb where old beliefs die and new structures begin to take form, even if, on the outside, everything seems dark, tight, and lonely. Joe Dispenza describes this state as the fertile unknown. It's when you step out of the predictable zone, abandon old mental habits, and dive into the quantum field without guarantees. And it is precisely there, in the invisible, that the field begins to reorganize your possibilities. But it only does so when you stop fighting to be who you once were. When you accept with humility, not knowing who you're becoming. In this stage, there's not much to do except trust the dissolution, to surrender to the process with as little resistance as possible, and to remember every day the cocoon feels like an end. But it's a beginning. The emptiness you feel is not hollow, it's full of seeds that haven't sprouted yet. You can repeat affirmations, visualize scenarios, practice every technique you know, but if your body is still in a state of alert, tension, or fear, the field won't respond to what you say. It will respond to what you vibrate. Because, in the end, it's not what the mind declares that shapes reality. It's what the body sustains as truth. And as long as there is somatic resistance, the flow of manifestation remains blocked. This resistance is not rational. It lives in the gut, in the tightened shoulders, in the shallow breath, in the clenched stomach. It's the body still trying to protect itself from something that once caused pain. Bruce Lipton shows us clearly, your internal environment, emotional and biochemical, not only regulates your genes, but also the way you interact with the world. And if that internal environment is vibrating in defense, the field understands that you are not yet ready to receive. Receiving is not about visualizing. It's about allowing your body to feel safe enough to embrace a new reality. And that only happens when you begin to relax into life instead of fighting it. When your breath deepens, when your heart slows down, when touch, pause, and silence become recognized as safe ground. Only then does the field understand. Now it can deliver. Joe Dispenza reminds us, coherence is not positive thinking. It is harmony between brain and heart, mind and body. And this harmony translates into a stable vibration. When you feel peace without needing a reason, when you no longer demand signs in order to trust, when your body finally stops resisting, the field opens. Not as a sudden miracle, but as a faithful reflection of who you have become on the inside. You're not being tested, you're being attuned. The field has no intention of hurting you or proving your strength. It simply responds. It responds to clarity. It responds to the coherence between what you feel, think, and vibrate. And when there's misalignment, it doesn't punish, it pauses. Not to hurt you, but to offer you something. Time. Time to find yourself, to rebuild, to remember who you are. Beyond the stories, beyond the losses, beyond the fear. Bruce Lipton teaches us that your biology is not a fixed destiny. It's a reflection of the environment you cultivate within. If your body lives in tension, life responds with resistance. If your heart shuts down, the world pulls away. But when your internal environment changes, everything begins to shift. Genetic expression, brain chemistry, and inevitably, the reality around you, because your biology responds to your spirituality. Then comes Neville Goddard, with his poetic and piercing precision. It's not thought that creates, it's the state assumed as real. The vibration you embody, the feeling you inhabit, that's what collapses probabilities. When you become vibrationally what you desire, the field has no choice but to mirror it. It reflects, it delivers. So maybe now you can feel it more clearly. You're not being challenged, you're being attuned. Every silence, every delay, every phase of confusion was simply the field waiting for you to be ready, ready to receive what was already yours, but in a way that you could finally sustain. The field doesn't judge, it mirrors. It doesn't evaluate your strength, it reflects your clarity. And if right now everything feels dark, remember this, you are not at the end of the road. You're in the sacred space between the seed and the bloom.